Coming in at number 10, we have the intelligent zombie Solomon Grundy. Inspired by a 19th century English nursery rhyme, Solomon Grundy was born centuries ago as a wealthy merchant, but after being murdered and having his body dumped in a swamp with mystical properties, he's now cursed to constantly be resurrected with slightly different properties each time. Usually being depicted as an incredibly physically strong zombie, Grundy's greatest power is his resilience to both magic and physical damage, meaning that every time he's faced by Batman, he needs to figure out a whole new clever plan to find a way to properly defeat him. Coming in at number 9, we've got to go with CLAYFACE. When you're facing off against the world's greatest detective, being able to disguise yourself as anyone seems like a pretty useful skill to have. This alone would make CLAYFACE a difficult foe for Batman to overcome, but combine that with the huge amounts of physical strength that CLAYFACE possesses when he changes into his more monstrous Hulk-like form, and you have a rare mix of stealth and strength that keeps Bruce Wayne on his toes. This ability to manipulate others through careful mimicry allows CLAYFACE to be far more intelligent than he appears. And while his skill as an actor comes across as funny in depictions such as the Harley Quinn TV show, it can be quite deadly under more serious circumstances. Coming in at number 8, we've got to go with the bladed assassin, Deathstroke. While in recent years, Slade Wilson has become more well-known for tormenting the Teen Titans, Deathstroke has also had many run-ins with the Justice League and the Dark Knight himself. With his brain operating at 9 times the efficiency of a normal human brain, Deathstroke is exactly the type of opponent that pushes Batman to his physical limits, with a complete mastery of every weapon he has at his disposal. Combine that with his Icon suit, which has been shown to even be able to withstand a punch from metahumans such as Superman, and this is a foe that Batman is always just barely able to outwit and defeat. Coming in at number 7, we have the malicious psychologist known as Hugo Strange. One of Batman's oldest villains, originally debuting only a few issues after the Caped Crusader himself in Detective Comics, Professor Hugo Strange was also one of the very first villains to ever figure out his secret identity as Bruce Wayne. While initially depicted as a typical mad scientist stereotype, more recent interpretations of the character have seen him as a devious manipulator, using his position of power as a doctor of psychology to examine the criminals of Arkham Asylum and scheming to gain power throughout Gotham City. It's this emphasis on mental ability rather than actual superpowers that makes Hugo Strange such an interesting villain to deal with, and the fact that he's consistently been able to figure out Batman's biggest secret in multiple different universes means that Hugo Strange just might be one of Bruce Wayne's biggest threats. Coming in at number 6, we have Bane, the villain who broke the Bat. A brilliant tactical warrior who was raised from childhood inside an island prison, Bane's most notable act was when he systematically eliminated Batman's support system and eventually faced and bested him in single combat, shattering Bruce Wayne's spine over his knee. This victory over the Dark Knight was only temporary, but has still given Bane an intimidating reputation that he more than lives up to, going on to become a supervillain crime boss and proving that Bane isn't just about pure physical strength, but that he's also a ruthless and brutal strategist as well, even willing to kill Alfred Pennyworth just to emotionally shatter Damian Wayne. It just goes to show that you should never ever underestimate Bane. Coming in at number 5, we have Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin. The owner of the Iceberg Lounge, perhaps the most famous criminal hangout in all of Gotham City, the Penguin might look similar to his namesake, but is far more deadly in reality. While an impressive crime lord even without any superhuman enhancements, the Penguin is made extra deadly by the special umbrella he carries, which is always stuffed to the brim with different lethal gadgets to help him fight against Batman or any other supervillain that seems interested in starting a turf war. This unpredictability and Oswald's sanity not quite being all there make the Penguin an incredibly difficult opponent to read, hiding the fact that this crime lord is far more dangerous than he initially appears. Coming in at number 4, we've got the reality warping BAT-MITE. A troublesome imp from the same 5th dimension as the Superman villain Mr. Mxyzptlk, the BAT-MITE is honestly more of a nuisance than a flat-out supervillain, often appearing just to try and challenge Batman or to see more of his heroic acts. Sending BAT-MITE back to his own dimension is usually a tall order given his complete reality warping powers, but luckily the world's greatest detective is usually smart enough to outwit BAT-MITE and send him packing to where he truly belongs. However, 5th dimensional beings have nearly limitless power within our regular 3-dimensional universe, meaning that BAT-MITE should probably have a close eye kept on him in the future. Coming in at number 3, we have Arthur Brown, aka the CLUEMASTER. Not to be confused with the similarly themed Riddler, the CLUEMASTER is a former game show host who wound up turning to crime in order to pay the bills. The father of Batman ally Spoiler, the CLUEMASTER for a time seemed to embrace the role of being a second-rate supervillain, before it was eventually revealed that his status as a Riddler ripoff was actually intentional, and that organizing Batman's more underrated foes was his master plan all along to avoid detection. It's not often that a villain is able to temporarily outwit the Caped Crusader, and CLUEMASTER shows just how powerful the right man with a plan can become. Coming in at number 2, we've got Poison Ivy. Born under the name of Pamela Isley, Poison Ivy has always been dead set on protecting the green plant life of the planet Earth, and especially values it over human life. While well known for being able to control plants and utilizing poisonous kisses as a weapon, Ivy's powers may be beyond what she usually shows off. In a particularly noteworthy storyline, Poison Ivy was able to mind control essentially the entire human population of Earth through their consumption of fruits and vegetables. And while that's definitely some weird comic book logic as to how that would work, Batman was only barely able to defeat her by bringing her into contact with the one human being she cares about the most, Harley Quinn. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the Batman Who Laughs. In a dark alternate world where the Joker realizes he's dying and begins a mass killing spree of everyone in Gotham, Batman is forced to finally kill his iconic foe. Unfortunately, at the moment of death, Bruce Wayne is infected with a special brand of Joker venom that completely flips his moral compass, but leaves intact all of his intelligence and tactical planning. All of the chaos of the Joker with the brains of Batman, this supervillain is Bruce Wayne's worst nightmare come to life, and was able to become so powerful over the course of his war against the multiverse that he was only able to be defeated by a literal God mode powered Wonder Woman.
And it's 10th birthday boy. Ray Salinger was a serial killer who operated in Gotham under the alias Birthday Boy, and he was actually the first costumed criminal encountered by Batman in his crime-fighting career. Introduced in Batman Earth 1 Volume 1 in June 2012, Birthday Boy is fascinated by young girls resembling his first kill. When in his killer mode, he wears a burlap sack with holes cut out for the eyes and a birthday party hat, usually in a room decorated like a birthday party. As a calling card, he left birthday candles where he stole away his victims and told his victims to make a wish that was decorated with the words "Happy Birthday Amanda," which is only creepier since we have Amanda here. And I feel like this guy is a representation of all of her DMs. That's right, I'm calling all of you nerds out. I think the sickest part of this character though was when he first started the whole Birthday Boy thing. He had been hired by Mayor Oswald Cobblepot to eliminate various enemies. In return, he was given girls from the streets or enemies of the Penguin as a reward. And at 9, Professor Pig. Professor Pig originally debuted in the alternate reality story of Batman number 666, which I love. He also debuted as a corpse, which I love even more. However, he was introduced as a recurring character in 2009 in Batman and Robin number 1. In Batman Reborn, Laszlo Valentine was an extreme circus mob boss until something turned him into Professor Pig, leading him to begin funding his scientific experiments by selling narcotics to the criminal underworld. All in all, he's an extremely disturbing villain, and that makes me think about why people aren't afraid of pigs as much as they are clowns, because if you ask me, this guy is freaking horrifying, okay? Professor Pig, if you couldn't tell, actually wears a pig mask, along with a butcher's apron, and what at times appears to be some form of hastily thrown together surgical outfit, like he got it from like Wish, or he got it from like Party City. It's freaking weird. Also ends up brainwashing and controlling various people who he calls his Dolotrons. Like, I don't know what else there is to do other than just run away, so I'm gonna move on now. Although next time I have a pet pig in Minecraft, I know what I'm naming him. And it ain't BOOTFACE. Okay, this guy's origin is the reason I wanted to talk about him. This guy's origin was simply him getting kicked in the face by Batman, and that's it. I'm not even kidding. BOOTFACE was a thug working for Terminus. He got his name because of a boot imprint embedded into his face, which, like I said, is from Batman. BOOTFACE first appeared in Batman and Robin Volume 2, number 10 from 2012, and honestly, it's one of the most interesting origins I've ever seen. And I mean this completely seriously. Everyone else has like a parent die, or was living in poverty, or was being abused. This dude just got kicked in the face and got so mad about it he became a supervillain. Even if he wasn't really like a good person beforehand. I mean, like, he was a thug and basically still is, but like still. Just this time he has a ridiculous name to go with it, but hey, I still love it. And a man who is fueled by pure rage because he was permanently scarred by his attacker that ends up being a superhero, that's good enough for me. That's so funny. BOOTFACE. And it's 7, Mirror Man. Lloyd Ventures is a criminal who was detained in Gotham State Penitentiary. Using broken mirror shards, he distracts the guards long enough to escape from prison. Inspired by mirrors, I guess somehow, he becomes Mirror Man. Upon creating a machine that would enable him to see through objects, Mirror Man began targeting Batman so that he could find out his secret identity. He literally discovers Batman's identity as Bruce Wayne by using a X-ray mirror, which is freaking nuts. Like, what even is that? How is that a thing? Mirror Man actually gets sent to prison before he can reveal the identity though, but because they want conflict, of course, he manages to escape with a plan to reveal Bruce's identity to the world, only foiled when Alfred, dressed as Batman, interrupts a press conference that Bruce Wayne was hosting, instantly disproving the fact that Batman is Bruce Wayne, because you saw them both in the same room. Even though that obviously Batman has partners. I don't know why people believe that. The public should have seen through this, okay? The people in Gotham City are dumber than we thought. I mean, they had Condiment King, so I guess they are dumb. Speaking of which, in its 6th, Condiment King. The Condiment King, created by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini for Batman the Animated Series, is a villain who makes use of various condiments, sometimes capable of causing anaphylactic shock. And his weapons are literally like those like squeeze tubes for like ketchup and mustard, just on guns. It's hilarious. He's generally used as comic relief within the series, but still. He would make many condiment-based puns. For example, the big bad bat guy, I knew you'd catch up to me sooner. How I relished this meeting. You, the dynamic Dark Knight, versus me, the conceptual Condiment King. Come, Batman, let's see if you can cut the mustard. The Condiment King is seemingly killed after being betrayed and bludgeoned by the Human Flame with his own ketchup and mustard guns in the miniseries Final Crisis Aftermath Run, which is a comic book, which already shows how he can actually be deadly aside from the whole like anaphylactic shock thing. And that's again not taking into account any potential allergic reactions that he can trigger or blindness. I mean, like, ketchup and mustard are very acidic and can cause some serious damage if left unchecked. It just goes right into the eyes, you know? Plus, what if you have fries and he gives you mustard, okay? The only appropriate punishment for that is death. Halfway through into number 5, Joker's daughter. Unfortunately, it's not the Joker's biological daughter. That would have been an interesting story. This is just a girl who finds Joker's face, stitches it onto hers, and then goes berserk. So honestly, it could very well be his biological daughter. The only person that I think would commit such an atrocious act is in fact the Joker, so who knows? While maybe not being as prolific or accomplished as the Joker, Joker's daughter is definitely insane enough for this list. Like, even if I'm pretty sure like a lot of people know she exists and like not many people underestimate her, but hey, look, even if one person underestimates her and they watch this video, boom, it's enough. It counts, okay? Not to mention the fact that she also went by Catgirl, Scarecrow, Riddler's daughter, Penguin's daughter, Card Queen, and Harley Quinn. Each incarnation also calling herself the respected super person's daughter, which I have to say is going to make a family reunion real awkward. But in actuality, she ended up being Dwella Dent, Two-Face's daughter, apparently, which is seemingly BS in my opinion, but we love a girl with a little flair, you know? And that flair will cause her to ruin Gotham City. In it for Clock King. Born William Talkman, Clock King spends his early years taking care of his invalid sister. One day he finds out from a doctor that he himself only has 6 months to live. Great. Despairing for his sister's future, he watches the timing of a local bank's vault in order to rob it, hoping that the money would provide for his sister after he was gone. His caper would have gone on successfully had he not tripped the silent alarm and been caught by the Green Arrow. The Clock King then goes on to join Major Disasters in Justice League, which becomes the Justice League Antarctica. This JLA play includes G-Nort, who ends up saving the lives of the entire team. The original Clock King had no metahuman powers or abilities, although he is athletic and extraordinarily smart. He extensively uses clocks and time-related gimmicks to devastating effect. His primary weapon is a sword forged into the shape of a clock's hand that also doubles as a walking stick, and his skill in swordsmanship is such that even Batman himself could not defeat him in single combat. So watch out for Clock King. Getting close to the end into number 3, the Calculator. While the Calculator now seems to be an oracle of sorts for supervillains, the original purpose and MO of the Calculator is far more entertaining and interesting, at least to me. Noah Cutler began his criminal career by crossing the country and getting into fights with various superheroes on purpose, analyzing and recording their battle tactics to ensure that he couldn't be beaten again. Or in some incarnations, he would simply get beaten and then press a button on his chest to ensure that he didn't get beat again. Maybe that was like taking in the information or something, like how Iron Man would just say like analyze his fight patterns and then come up with countermeasures, you know? But either way, okay, do you know how insanely overpowered that could have been? Just being able to like press a button and then boom, you're instantly basically immune to Batman or Robin or even Superman. Like that would be absolutely amazing. You do this enough times, you could just do whatever you want. And like then other criminals like start paying you to do their crimes for them because you guarantee success. That's freaking nuts. Okay, I wish they kept that Calculator. That could have been an even bigger threat than Darkseid if he kept going at it like that. This is why I'm the hero, because I would be unstoppable as a villain. Penultimately in at number 2, Lex Joker. Lex Joker was created when John Dee, also known as Dr. Destiny, collapsed the DC universe in half. First appearing in Superman Batman number 60 in 2009, Lex Joker is the combination of, you guessed it, Lex Luthor and Joker. Lex Joker hired Doomstroke and Terranado to destroy the Justice Titans. However, after the JTs allied with Batman and Superman, he hired 4 more mercenaries to create the Brotherhood of Injustice. Thanks to Terra, who had gone undercover with the JTs, they were able to attack the Justice Tower and come on, let's be honest. If you have the brains of Lex Luthor and the complete insanity of the Joker, you're making one heck of an opponent. When you have 2 powerful forces in comics, at some point there's like bound to be a mashup of the 2 to create a larger, even more powerful villain. And Lex Joker is probably the scariest combination we could have gotten that wasn't like Joker and Doomsday or Joker and Darkseid. Oh god, Joker Darkseid. And finally, in number 1, the Eraser. The Eraser was the chosen alias of Lenny Fiasco, who turned to crime after living his college days under constant mocking and taunting by his classmates. Of course, it's because, you know, that's what college is like. No, that's high school, bro. Fiasco is a professional at covering the tracks of other crimes. For a 20% cut, the Eraser will erase the evidence of another crime. And honestly, I think that it's like the only job that anyone with the name Fiasco could have. The villain's power is a special helmet designed to look like a pencil eraser, because of course it is, that can wipe off evidence, even those that would be invisible to the naked eye, which is pretty damn cool when you think about it. After Batman posed as a villain to try to capture the eraser, the villain told Bruce that he had became a criminal because Bruce had shattered his dreams of going out with Celia Smith. I'm not even gonna get into that, okay? Bruce didn't even remember her name, which made the eraser angry. And I think that this is probably the absolute coolest concept for a supervillain, because in all honesty, if this guy wasn't an idiot, he could have ruled the world. Like, just straight up, this guy would absolutely ruin any and all investigations and then turn the tides of trials. This guy could have ended up being just like a shadow government in himself, okay? If only he wasn't just a dumb.
Number 10, Blockbuster. Blockbuster might not be an A-list Bat villain, but I don't think I've ever mentioned him on this channel before, and I thought it was about time that we gave him a little shout out. We see you, Blockbuster, we see you. While not one of the most popular Bat villains, Blockbuster still packs a mighty punch. The current incarnation of the villain is Roland Desmond, who has reappeared in the Prime Earth continuity throughout the current Nightwing series. In fact, even though he started out of Detective Comics, he's now actually thought of more as a Nightwing villain. Even more recently resurfacing in Nightwing in issue 83. Blockbuster has also had many incarnations throughout the years since the character's first appearance as Mark Desmond back in 1965 in Detective Comics issue 345. Some versions have been tougher and more powerful than others, but all of them have possessed some level of super strength, durability, and stamina, usually granted to them by the Blockbuster serum, and often at the cost of some intelligence. However, the current Blockbuster does not suffer the same weakness, instead simply suffering physical pain if remaining in his transformed super buff state for too long.
In a 9, Condiment King. Okay, before you yell at me, hear me out a little bit, okay?
Condiment King may just seem like a random dude who uses ketchup and mustard as a weapon, but you have to admit that would not fit in the DCEU. The DCEU has a much darker tone than the Batman animated series Condiment King was created for, and if he was in the DCEU they would have to make him incredibly deadly for it to work properly. This guy would basically just use allergies as a weapon, and I don't mean like the "oh you got the sniffles and your eyes are kind of itching" kind of allergies. I mean like throat closes up and eyes pop out of your head kind of allergies. They would have to turn Condiment King into such a horrific killer that he would actually end up being overpowered and probably cause a lot of controversy. Even if it was just like condiments combined with acid instead of normal condiments, that would be absolutely nuts. You thought that they handled Doomsday bad? Wait until you see people's faces melting because they got hit with Dijon honey mustard and freaking acid.
Number 8. Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze is Victor Freeze, a vastly underrated Batman villain in my opinion, but admittedly a hard villain to bring to the big screen, though maybe not as hard to bring to the big screen as Condiment King. And that's not just because of his overall look and character design, but because of how capable he can be and how powerful he is. Mr. Freeze is one of the few Batman villains who actually possesses powers and isn't just a deranged criminal. Of course, he is still a deranged criminal. Mr. Freeze in current continuity is also a deranged scientist, who from an early age seemed to have a fixation with the cold and cryogenics. This fixation likely existed because of key tragic moments that had happened when he was younger, also taking place in and around the cold, such as his father abandoning him and his mother's fatal injury and later death at his own hands. Freeze would become so obsessed he would convince himself that he was married to the subject of the first case of cryogenic stasis, despite the fact that she was technically like a lot older than him, Nora Fields. But a change to the timeline would make it so that this was actually true and that he and Nora had in fact been together before she was frozen, so she became his real wife, meaning their relationship was no longer considered one of Victor's delusions in main continuity. Mr. Freeze is not only powerful with his ice gun and unique physiology, which allows him to freeze anything he touches and create ice structures, but he is complex and unique in appearance, meaning we likely won't see him in the DCEU anytime soon. Not that I'm saying the villains aren't complex. That wasn't like a sick burn to the DCEU or anything, just to be clear.
And at 7, Scarecrow. The Scarecrow has made an appearance in the Dark Knight movies, however those aren't in the DCEU, at least yet. Until this point the closest we've gotten is the Fear Gas from the Arrowverse crossover event of Elseworlds. However, that gas made some insane hallucinations that ended up with the Flash, who at the time was Oliver Queen's, speed to be useless, which would be incredibly overpowered when it comes to the rest of the DCEU. When Oliver and Barry were fighting, Barry was landing hits on Oliver despite not having his super speed, and Oliver wasn't knocking Barry away with super speed punches. This being used on a greater scale, like we would see Scarecrow do in an actual movie, would absolutely destroy the world, especially with heroes like Superman and Martian Manhunter. And we know that this is how the Scarecrow's gas would operate in the DCEU, because thanks to the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, we got confirmation that Ezra Miller's Flash and Grant Gustin's Flash exist in the same multiverse. Or perhaps the cinematic universe exists within the antimatter universe. It would explain the darker themes. Either way, we know that's how the gas would work, and that would be a little too much to handle in one movie.
Number 6. Bane. Bane is known for being one of Batman's all-around strongest villains, but let's not forget that Bane also brings smarts to the table. Okay, so maybe not if we're counting the Harley Quinn animated series version of Bane, but comic book Bane at least is known for also possessing a brilliant mind. A lot of people forget that about him. He was the mastermind in fact behind the death of Alfred, which was also part of his scheme to break the Batman in a much more all-around way. Granted, he also took out Alfred because his demands were not being met. He'd basically ordered Batman not to make a rescue attempt, but then Damian Wayne did make a rescue attempt because he didn't listen to the warning that was given to them, and so Alfred died by Bane's hands after Damian's attempt failed. Bane, being such a massive man of muscle, also makes it hard to bring him to life. He's not only a hard villain to write, but he's also a difficult one to cast and depict as well, because he just looks like literally a brick house.
Halfway through in at number 5, Arkham Knight. Not only is this character loved by some of the people who played the Batman Arkham series of games, the Arkham Knight is a highly skilled military technician who possesses expert knowledge of Batman's tactics and fighting style, which can be attributed to the fact that he was personally trained by the Vigilante, being revealed as Jason Todd, a moment that we all remember, for better or worse. He is a master of hand-to-hand combat, martial arts, and marksmanship. The high-tech military-like battle suit that he wears further enhances his physical strength, speed, and durability. When Batman was ambushed by the Dark Knight, he was able to knock the Dark Knight off his feet with one punch. This absolute mastery of Batman's tactics would make him a hella good villain, however the amount of power he has would probably be too much for the DCU. They already had Batman fight Superman and win, so they would have to like supercharge Arkham Knight to make it an actually interesting fight, which would just ruin the character even more than some would consider him already ruined.
Number 4. Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, depending on what you prefer. A lot of people prefer Ra's, I prefer Ra's. We can all coexist, it's a beautiful world. Ra's is one of Batman's all-time greatest nemesis. While he might not possess direct superpowers of any kind, like most of Batman's rogues, he is one of the most skilled fighters and has one of the most brilliant minds. Like Bane. I like people with brilliant minds apparently. Too bad Ra's usually uses his brilliant mind to concoct all sorts of schemes in order to topple governments, sow chaos, and gain power the world over. Ra's al Ghul is the head of the League of Assassins and has come close to completely defeating Batman in the past, with him even successfully using Batman's own research during the Tower of Babel JLA story to defeat all of Batman's superpowered colleagues on the team.
Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Solomon Grundy. Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday. That's what the story says. But when killed, Grundy will return and be resurrected in the swamp where he died, and then because you know, that's his thing. This sort of resurrection and recurring antagonist thing doesn't really work in movies. In TV, sure it can work. Introduce the character, then have them come back once a season for an episode or two. However, with movies, those are more often than not like one-time villains that are to be dealt with and then forgotten about, unless the movie is like a two-parter or the villain ends up winning. This kind of concept has to be taken into account when thinking about who would be too overpowered in the DCEU. Solomon Grundy would be one of those villains that wouldn't realistically be a one-time villain. Even if they brought him back for another movie with like a big team up of villains, it wouldn't matter, because he would die and then just come back again. The story would never be over. The threat would never actually be fully handled, and that's just the way the character was written. It's great for comics and it would work okay on TV, but in movies this guy wouldn't work in the slightest. It's unfortunate because I love Grundy as a character, but they would just ruin him like they did Arkham Knight and Doomsday. May I go on?
Number 2. Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy is one of my favorite characters in the Batman universe, period. And also coincidentally one of the most powerful villains I think that currently exists in Batman's wheelhouse. She is brewing up something huge lately in the Batman comics and has threatened basically the entire world on multiple occasions, but also has sought in the past to remind people of why she strikes out as an eco-terrorist, at times working with international science communities and political meets to fight against global warming and work towards preserving important parts of our ecosystem. However, while Poison Ivy will be coming to the Arrowverse on CW, we still have yet to have a casting for her in the DCEU, and this could be because Pamela Isley is just too crazy complicated and OP to show up there. After all, she has proven before how hard she is to take on in the comics. When she took over the world, it seemed almost nothing initially, not even Batman, would be able to stop her.
Finally, in at number 1, The Batman Who Laughs. Being first introduced in Dark Days, the casting #1 in 2017, the Batman Who Laughs was Bruce Wayne from Earth 22 of the Dark Multiverse. He was a lieutenant of Barbados, and the leader of the Dark Knights during the first Dark Multiverse invasion, and later the infected heroes of the Secret Six. He convinced Perpetua, the original creator of the multiverse, to choose him as her lieutenant over Lex Luthor, as his vision was limited by his ego. Then the Batman Who Laughs continued on with his own plans, eventually acquiring cosmic power and becoming a bigger threat than Perpetua herself. Yeah, that's right, this guy ends up gaining cosmic power. He ends up implanting his brain into the corpse of a version of Bruce Wayne who had Dr. Manhattan's abilities, giving the Batman Who Laughs near omnipotence. Yeah, this guy is the definition of overpowered. And not only that, but he's an absolute psychopath. He will gut you like a fish while your family watches and then make them play double dutch with your intestines and think that that was a boring weekend. This guy is absolutely insane. I know I said that the DCEU is dark, but this is even darker than they would go. There, in my opinion, is no way that they could introduce the Batman Who Laughs properly without making the movie rated R or literally just being unable to publish it. It's absolutely insane. So yeah, I don't think we'll be seeing him anytime soon.